Namaskar, I am Assistant Professor Kritika Dev from LJ School of Law, and today once again we are here with one more topic. And as always say, I always find every topic to be really interesting. And today, the topic of the session is wrongful restraint. Familiar term? You must have heard it, you must have used it before. Let's take an example that he restrained me from doing that. But is that the meaning under IPC also? That will get clear when we will see the definition and we will see the relevant case laws. That is restraint, or is the term restraint completely similar when it is used in general life and when it is used under IPC. So let's get started. Now, as you can see on your screens, that section 339 of Indian Penal Code talks about wrongful restraint. So it gives us the very definition from which we'll get to know the legal meaning of the term. Now, let's quickly let's read the section. The section says, whoever voluntarily obstructs any person so as to prevent that person from proceeding in any direction in which that person has a right to proceed is said to wrongfully restrain that person. Now, as I always say, the definition comprises of so many important terms, and those terms actually makes the definition. So, if you remember, we always see the ingredients of the section. We break the section in lines, and there we put some important ingredients which actually makes the section what it is. Okay, so in order to understand it, let's quickly see the ingredient of the section. Now, the ingredients: voluntarily obstruction. Now, what do we mean by that? And before understanding or moving further with the term, let's list all the ingredients here. Okay, so we have these four ingredients which we will of course understand with the help of examples. The first one is voluntarily obstruction. So, the terms that we had been reading, the sections that we had been reading till now, we must have seen dishonestly, intentionally, voluntarily. So these are the actual terms which make something or which makes a thing into an offense. If that voluntarily obstruction is in there, if it is in a bona fide way, or if it is by mistake or anything, then it will not be covered under the section. So the obstruction has to be voluntarily. It means the person who is actually restraining the other person, it has to be voluntarily. Okay. Now, before moving, let's take a very simple example in order to make you understand what restraint is. Let me give you a very simple example. First, say you are just moving on a road. Okay, you are simply moving on a road and somebody suddenly comes and stops you like this. You cannot go beyond this limit. Okay, of course you have the other directions to go from, but you are being stopped to go from one direction, from that one direction, or in that one direction. Somebody says, no, you cannot go from here, or you cannot go in this direction. Of course you have the other directions open, but stopping you voluntarily in order to go in that very direction is wrongful restraint, because you have a right to move, right? So if you have the right to move in that very direction and you are being restrained from moving in that one direction, though you have the other doors open or other directions open, even then it will be wrongful restraint. That person cannot take a plea that I just stopped him or her from going into one direction. The other directions were open. Therefore, it does not amount to any offense. But no, it will amount to an offense, and that is wrongful restraint. Okay, so now this was a very simple and basic example in order to make you understand what wrongful restraint is. Now, let's see the voluntary obstruction. As I was saying, it has to be voluntarily. It should not be by mistake. It should not be by any other means which is innocent in nature. It has to be voluntarily. If I am stopping you from moving in one direction. It has to be voluntarily. It has to be from my side voluntarily, right? Now, the second one is person. You must be thinking, what do we mean by person here, right? So you just wait for this term person. This we will understand with the help of the case law, right? So you just keep this term aside. We'll understand it with the help of the case law. Now, prevents. Now, what do we understand by prevents? Here, the let's take that very basic example, that person is being prevented, right? That person is being prevented. Let's take this third element and the fourth element together from proceeding in any direction, right? That person, let's give them a name AB as usual, right? So A was stopping B. A was preventing, A is here, B from proceeding in this direction. So here, A is preventing B from proceeding in this direction. That no, you cannot go. I am preventing you to move in this direction. So A cannot go in that very direction. Right? So these are the elements. There has to be a voluntary obstruction. What A is doing, it has to be voluntarily, right? And of course, B is a person. He's stopping B in order to move in that direction. He's preventing B in proceeding in that very direction where B had the right to move. Correct? So these are the four ingredients. Now let's quickly see the case law. Now, what does the case law says? So there is this very interesting case, Aru Muga Nadar. Under this case, you can see what has been held, that the court held that physical presence of the accused is not necessary. Now, what were the facts of the case? This is altogether, it brought a new concept. Now, the concept was there were tenants, okay, and mother, daughter, of course, the mother and the children. And what the landowner did, of course, they had the right to enter. When you are the tenant of the place, you have all the right to enter into that place, right? Because you pay for that very place. Now what happened under this case, the owner just locked the house, the door of the house. Now he locked that very door and he wasn't there, right? He wasn't there. So now what happened, when they came, they saw the lock. Now in general, it is very difficult to find out whether was that an offense, was was that particular situation amounted to an offense. Now here, if we see the ingredients, whenever you see a situation, you just need to see the ingredients of every offense, and then you need to put that situation completely into the ingredients, and then you'll have to see whether it is fulfilling all the requirements of the section. So here you can see that yes, firstly there had been a voluntary obstruction, right? That lock is the voluntary obstruction, and those persons were prevented to move in one direction, that is the direction towards their house, whether they had the right to move, they had the right to enter into their house. So it was in uh, the landlord prevented them to move in that direction. So of course it is altogether even at that time, this case actually brought this new concept that even restraining somebody to enter into their own house amounts to wrongful restrainment, right? So there it was held that it was a wrongful restrainment, and it is not necessary that the accused has to be present, right? Accused could have taken the plea that I was not present there. How could that amount to wrongful restraint? But there the court held that though you weren't present, but that amounted to wrongful restraint because the other elements, which are actually the ingredients of the sections, are fulfilled, and something on which the section is silent, the court is not bound to interpret. We have read it in many other previous cases, right? So the court said it is not essential that the person has to be present there. Now let's see another very, very interesting and important case. Yes, here is the citation of the case. Gopala Reddy versus Lakshmi Reddy. AIR 1947, Madras 124. Now, let me read. The court held obstruction of the vehicle with man present in it amounts to an offense under this section. Now, before this very case law, I told you, right? You remember, I told you keep that person ingredient aside, we'll see into it later. Now, the court said, before this very judgment, there was another case where the court said that just obstructing and vehicle not to move in one direction, right? Just the vehicle, if the vehicle is vehicle is standing and you just put a barrier or anything where there was no men in the vehicle, then that does not amount to wrongful restraint. So the presence of people has to be there. A car is there at the parking lot and suddenly somebody puts up a barrier in order not to make that car move if somebody later on wants to take that car, whatever it is. But the time when it was there, no no person was there. So, by this very case law, it got cleared that obstruction of the vehicle with men present in it, it amounts to an offense of wrongful restraint. So, a broader version, that vehicle with men, if being stopped in order to go in one direction, which happened under this case, there were number of people in the vehicle and they were stopped from going in one direction. So, it amounted to wrongful restraint, right? I hope the concept is clear now. What do we mean by wrongful restraint? But with this, we have one exception. Now, what the exception says? The exception says the obstruction of a private way over land or water, which a person in good faith believes himself to have a lawful right to obstruct, is not an offense within the meaning of this section. So, as I always say, if it is done in good faith, believing himself, there is a private land, believing himself having the lawful right, right? Lawful right over the property, and then he obstructs somebody to come into it, then or enter into the property or water, then it does not amount to wrongful restraint because he is acting in good faith, believing himself to have the lawful right to obstruct, right? That no, it is my land, you cannot enter upon it. He believed himself to have that very right. Whether he had it or not, now that is a different question. But here he in good faith believed, right? So he acted in good faith. So he will be protected from this very offense. So this is all about wrongful restraint. Now you must be having so many questions in mind that what if that person must have restrained from going from all the directions? Now, what is that concept? We will read in the very next session, and we have a legal term for that as well. So wait for the next session. I'll clear all your future doubts in that future lecture, right? Till then, as I always say, you keep studying, you keep learning, and before moving, let's quickly see the punishment also, what the punishment is, because it is something which does not need much explanation. So the punishment for wrongful restraint is very simple: imprisonment up to 1 month and fine up to 500 rupees or both, right? It could either be 1 month. Yeah, I know it is less in amount because of the obvious reason we read the section. So 1 month or 500 rupees or with both, right? So that is the punishment which is provided for this very offense. And here we are done with everything, with the offense, with the punishment, exception, and with the case laws, of course. Yeah. Until then, just study and revise, prepare yourself for the next session, and take good care of yourself. Thank you.